because we recognize that this is serious work. But while I was minister responsible for fisheries, and I'm not going to get into whether we should take up Clause 10 and not take up Clause 10 and how Clause 10 means that we are casting judgment. We all know that this government is not casting judgment on anybody. But when I was minister responsible for fisheries, I cannot tell you the number of occasions that the fisher folk would reach out to my office and ask me to come to the market, concerned for their own safety because of incidents in the market. The frequency with which, Madam Deputy Speaker, any right-thinking person would have to be concerned. And I am saying that, Madam Deputy Speaker, as a person who loves the market and who loves the vendors and the fishermen in the market. But the reality is that the fish vendors, as the minister responsible said, felt that in this particular instance, without a judgment on themselves or without a judgment on anybody else in Barbados, that we should continue with that particular clause. Now, if it is that we care so much about their opinion when it suits us, how do we not care about their opinion when it defeats the weakness and exposes the weakness of the argument that was put forward to take it out? We can't have respect for their opinion when it suits us and no respect for their opinion when it does not suit us. I do not know the sign that the Honourable Member for Christchurch East did in sign language, but it holds true. At the end of the day, Madam Deputy Speaker, this bill is a serious, comprehensive piece of legislation. Last week or week before, when we debated the Environmental Health Bill, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition asked then that we bring comprehensive pieces of legislation to address all the issues pertaining to a particular sector in one, which is what this bill does. Again, therefore, when it is suitable for him, for the Honourable Member, it is acceptable. But when it is not suitable for the Honourable Member, it is unacceptable. Of course, we all also recognize that we were then subjected to the idea that because it was presented, it was accepted by all in this place because it was presented, and that we should sit in silence and let it be said. But when there is opposition, when we get up and repeat or we challenge it, that's also a problem. So do you want us to sit and accept or get up and challenge? I said a few weeks ago that it is difficult to have a stable conversation with a man who is at war with himself. Hey, the issues in George Street are his, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South. Madam Deputy Speaker, let us get into some of the points that were raised. So that is Clause 10. And we recognize, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the vendors were asking for it because they're concerned about their business. This is about their livelihood and their work. It disturbs their business. Every time there is an incident in the market, somebody refuses to go for a day, 2 days, or a week. It is about their livelihood, Madam Deputy Speaker. Clause 269 that was referred to in relation to gender. Imagine the clause was mentioned, Clause 269, and absolutely nothing was said about the clause. So we raised the clause in a debate on fisheries to then try to educate persons about gender relations, when this government has done more to make sure that there is a gender balance in this country than any other government. But absolutely no reference whatsoever to the clause. Clause 269, let me find it for you. And then nothing. Absolutely nothing. That's the second time it was mentioned. The third time that the reference was made to the bill was in relation to insurance. And that whether the government needs to put something to do with insurance into the bill. And again, this bill, Madam Deputy Speaker, was on our website since November, laid in Parliament since November. So there is no excuse for saying you didn't have a chance to read the bill. So I would wish to direct the Honourable Leader of the Opposition to Clause 67 that speaks to registration of Barbados fishing vessels. And permit me to read it, Madam Deputy Speaker. Clause 67.1. No person shall operate a fishing vessel or other seagoing craft used for fishing or related activities in Barbados waters unless the fishing vessel or seagoing craft A is registered and the owner is in possession of a valid certificate of registration of a Barbados fishing vessel issued in respect of that vessel or other seagoing craft as prescribed under this Act. And in B, that vessel has insurance coverage or cover in an equivalent form of financial security against risk of loss or damage to third parties. And it goes on. Madam Deputy Speaker. The bill also speaks to insurance, compulsory third-party insurance at 398. It would be of benefit to the leader of the opposition to at least engage with what is before the Parliament. Read the bill. Clause 398, no fishing vessel shall be used as part of a fish tourism venture except that vessel has third-party liability insurance or other equivalent form of financial security. Madam Deputy Speaker, this is about the fourth or fifth time that we have come to Parliament to be schooled by someone who needs to be the student. It is clear to me that if the opposition leader would take some time to read the bills, half of what he proposed as solutions, he would recognize were already in the bill. We were discussing disabilities. Oh, you need to set up a fund. There was a whole section on having a fund. And this is the level to which the debate has now fallen, Madam Deputy Speaker. The other incident that was referred to was in part 5 that spoke to supply of data and information. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, I keep saying that we are debating someone who is at war with himself. On the one hand, we are scolded for not modernizing the industry. When we modernize it, I heard, you need to have modern legislation, but modern legislation is actually what is before the House. You all need to have modern legislation. But praise us for the modern legislation. You all need to do infrastructure. You need modern infrastructure, but praise us for the infrastructure that we did. It seems to me that the opposition leader has a problem for every solution. A cloud for every silver lining. It is clear to me that if you were to look at what is before us, Madam Deputy Speaker, and we say, have to have data, what is wrong with that? This is what I found offensive about his contribution, however, because he would have us believe that the persons who drafted the legislation, and let me say to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this bill was drafted after much consultation. So when you insult the persons who drafted the legislation, trying to cast aspersions on the CPC's office, you are casting aspersions on all the technocrats in the ministry, you are casting aspersions on all the fishermen and the vendors who participated, the international community, the local stakeholders, Madam Deputy Speaker, all who had something to say about this bill. But when he says it means that we do not understand fisheries, it means he does not understand fisheries.
The Honourable Member, please.
The Honourable Member for Christchurch South. The Honourable Member for Christchurch South, Madam Deputy Speaker, obviously is not aware that the most intelligent people that I ever had the opportunity to interact with are persons who work in the market. So when it is said that a fish vendor who is selling fish does not have time to record what is said and what sales they made, he obviously has never spoken to a fish vendor. Spend some time in Christchurch South, from whence you came, or wherever it is that you attempt now to go. If you ask a fish vendor at the end of the day, what did you sell today? There is no fish vendor who cannot tell you every single piece of fish that they sold, the poundage in which they sold, the time at which they sold it, and so on and so on. I was in awe of the capacity, Madam Deputy Speaker, the capacity to recall at the end of the day, at the end of a week, And I would also tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, while the opposition leader may think this is outside the capacity of many of them already do it. Keep records. So when it is that you want to suggest that we are stereotyping fish vendors, it is the opposition leader who, by virtue of what he contributed today, is the person who is stereotyping the fish vendors. Madam Deputy Speaker, the last occasion, or is that all five, on which the opposition leader spoke, Madam Deputy Speaker, we found ourselves then having a conversation about milk. Milk. I was wondering if he was talking about fish milk. Fish milk. Because we now have to spend 3 hours. There is a view that you have to talk for 3 hours. And in that 3 hours now, you must spend your time upward and downward and cross there and about here. The opposition leader must speak for 3 hours every time we bring a bill. And during the course of the contribution, repeat, cast aspersions, say these ludicrous statements. Madam Deputy Speaker, on a bill on fisheries, we end up talking about milk. I beg the question again, whether we were talking about fish milk. The truth of the matter is, Madam Deputy Speaker, and if the Honourable Minister of Agriculture, I'm sure he has addressed it before, and the persons who are involved, and then to blame the government, as if the government has been the cause or the reason that many places in the world were having difficulty accessing milk. And I would not get into that. But Madam Deputy Speaker, before I get into some of the other things, because I will not be distracted, this is a government that remains focused. When we came into office, Madam Deputy Speaker, and I got the opportunity to be Minister responsible for Maritime Affairs and the Blue Economy, it was clear to me during the initial conversation by the Honourable Prime Minister, and the other thing is this, that every time a member in this floor says something about the Prime Minister, the opposition leader wants us to behave as if the Prime Minister is something to be scorned. A Prime Minister that has brought glory to this country. A Prime Minister that has led this country with distinction and has allowed us to bring Barbados back from the depths to which the party that the leader for the opposition inveigled himself and made sure he had the opportunity to lead. It is this Prime Minister, sir, and the way she led the government. And I must tell you, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am very proud of the Prime Minister of Barbados. And if I am to be ashamed of her, it would not be because of the hallucinations or the delusions of the leader of the opposition. But Madam Deputy Speaker, in the first conversation that I had, because I'm a social scientist, as everyone knows by now, I said to the Prime Minister when I was offered Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy, this is a true story. Well, I expected, to be truthful, to be in the ministry that I now hold. And I was grateful for the opportunity to lead Maritime Affairs and Blue Economy. And the Prime Minister, in her wisdom, said to me, Kirk, at that time she was not calling me minister, you will come to find that the social issues are the issues that you must resolve in the blue economy space, Madam Deputy Speaker. And we have brought legislations, Madam Deputy Speaker, to be able to do just that. But I go further. When I became Minister responsible, Madam Deputy Speaker, I found a poem by Frank Collymore that I thought was perhaps one of the most moving pieces, and I will read the first stanza. And it simply says, it's called Hymn to the Sea. Like all who live on small islands, I must always be remembering the sea. Like all who live on small islands, I must always be remembering the sea. It means that we have to care about the people who work in it. We have to care about the fish who swim in it, the coral that survive in it, the entire biodiversity that exists there, Madam Deputy Speaker. And it is shameful when we come here week after week for political points. And the funny thing is, I also listened to the opposition leader as he spoke about the need for us to do a haul out at Oistins. Well, I was there. We had a meeting. I reminded the opposition leader previously in this place. We had a meeting. The person who came in at the time with the solution that he had proposed at Oistins at the time, when he saw the movement of the boats at Oistins only looked easy, but that water is not easy. Anyone who deals with Oistins would tell you And at the time, what was said was that the solution was not suitable for Barbados, the one that he just spoke about, the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. The solution that is now being bandied about in this place was not suitable for Barbados. I am happy to see the Honourable Leader, the Honourable Minister responsible for fisheries, now having a solution, one that makes sense for the people of Oisins, and the people of Oisins can expect relief very soon. I also find it amusing. You know, self-adulation is a thing. I also find it amusing. If we were on the day before the hurricane, let me be real. If I were on the day before the hurricane when I was minister, or if the Honourable Member for Christchurch, West Central, in his capacity as minister, and let me say to you, Honourable Member, you are doing an excellent job. An excellent job. But if we had said the day before the hurricane, I had called Barnufo, or I had called any of the fishing organizations and say, haul all the boats out and put them on the pasture in Deacons now. If I had said, haul out all the boats out of the safe space that Barbados has had for years, for decades, and put them all on the pasture in Deacons, as everyone would say I am a madman. It is the ramblings of a madman. We should take all the boats and put them on Oisins the day on Deacons Pasture the day before a hurricane. But nobody would take us seriously. But it's easy to look back and to see that after something that has served this country for 30 years is violated by a hurricane that had unexpected strength, it's easy to come and say, oh, you should have put them there. I know the boats are being repaired because, you know, the government ain't doing that for the boats, but the same location on which the boats are being repaired, so clearly you saw the boats being repaired. This government is busy repairing the vessels. Now also, I am to be praised for that. It is to me, Madam Deputy Speaker, a difficult thing, you know, to come to Parliament, to prepare yourself to engage in intellectual discussion or discourse on these matters. And no matter how low you set your expectations, there is a way some persons find to go even lower. We went, Madam Deputy Speaker, to Oistins. The jetty at Oistins needed repair. I remember in the first conversation, when we said we were going to fix the jetty at Oistins, there was a fisherman who, I won't call his name, but he said to me, Minister, you are new. There are many people who said they're going to fix that jetty and they never did anything for the jetty in Oisins, but the jetty in Oisins was fixed. When we said we were going to repair the market and to make sure that the metal, the properties on top of the counters met phytosanitary standard, they said, some of them, Madam Deputy Speaker, that, you know, government always says they're going to take care of the fisher folk and they never do. But we did that too. Even as much as complaining about the sun, and because, Madam Deputy Speaker, I spent, as does know the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, considerable time in the market. So at a certain time in Oistins, the sun would affect the vendors and we extended the covering of the market. We did the same thing, Madam Deputy Speaker. We repaired the stall, the vending space for the vendors at Oistins. There has been so much work done at Oistins. Well, if I were to go in front of anybody who would have done so much work on my behalf, in the presence of my mother or my father or anybody who cares about me and complain, they would call me an ungrateful child. It is the behavior of an ungrateful child. If it is that we've done all of these things at Oistins, to find ourselves subjected to these things, and Madam Deputy Speaker, while I do not get personally offended by any of these things, let me say that I put my heart and my soul into that job. And so when we did Tent Bay, I was proud of the work we did at Tent Bay. When we did Oistins, I was proud of the work we did in Oistins. When we did Bridgetown, I was proud of the work we did in Bridgetown. When we did Pile Bay, I was proud of the work we did at Pile Bay. When we did Paynes Bay, I was proud of the work we did at Paynes Bay. And when we did St. Peter, I was proud of the work we did in Spicetown. All of the markets, Madam Deputy Speaker, and then we were turning our attention to the landing sites. And I know the Honourable Member, Minister responsible for fisheries, is now looking at the landing sites. So I do not come here, Madam Deputy Speaker, with my tail behind my legs. This idea about I ain't frightened for nobody and I ain't taking it. Madam Deputy Speaker, there is a way we comport and conduct ourselves in this place. And this idea about who I'm fighting and I ain't fighting and, you know, some of us have to be the adult in the room. It is clear to me, Madam Deputy Speaker, that this government has a record in fisheries that is second to none. In relation to the incident that occurred with Beryl, Madam Deputy Speaker, none of us could have seen it, but I doubt very much there has been a single government that responded the way that this government responded to dealing with the issues that came up as a result of the hurricane. I doubt it. I doubt that you can find a single case where a government responded the way that this government has responded to the issues that came up, Madam Deputy Speaker. And Madam Deputy Speaker, we spent a lot of time. You know, there are serious conversations that must be had in fisheries. The Honourable Minister spoke about the Marine Spatial Plan. We also, Madam Deputy Speaker, as part of that Marine Spatial Plan, we must look at the marine protected areas. I have a colleague from one of the other islands. I won't call the island, but he spoke of his experience when he brought a marine protected area. And a marine protected area essentially is a space where you either reduce or you prevent certain activities in that space. It may include fishing. And when you do that, Madam Deputy Speaker, over a year or two, certainly within a 5-year span, the fish, because the fish have a propensity to replenish themselves, the abundance of fish that you get in those areas, Madam Deputy Speaker, it is a case of being able to hold back today so you could get something tomorrow. And that is all that we are saying. Madam Deputy Speaker, when we look at the Marine Spatial Plan and the marine protected areas, Madam Deputy Speaker, we outlined, and as part of our plan, Madam Deputy Speaker, in line with the SDGs, particularly SDG 13 and 14, which I concern myself with a lot, and SDG 11, which is in relation to sustainable action in communities. We made sure that we were doing the right things in this government. Madam Deputy Speaker, none of us could have predicted what happened with Beryl, but the government responded well. The funny thing is, again, you know, whenever we say the word resilience in here, oh, you're all in love with the word resilience. Everything about this government is resilience. But when you ask us to build a safe harbor, either at Bridgetown or somewhere else, what do you think that is? I am telling you, there is a certain misunderstanding. I would have to call it a misunderstanding because I would never be one to accuse the Honourable Leader of the Opposition of deliberately misrepresenting the facts. And even though it has become clear to me that no matter how many facts we put on the table, the Honourable Leader would make sure that his opinion is never contaminated by truth or facts, regardless of the amount of facts that we put on the table. But at the end of the day, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we build out a safe harbor, what do you think that is? That is resilience. When we say to the fish vendors, let us understand how much fish you catch in a day so that in the event that you suffer a loss, we can compensate you for the loss. That is also resilience. When we put in place the things that we put in place to compensate, to give financial support, to give support for rebuilding the boats, that is also about resilience. It is the word that offends the Leader of the Opposition, but clearly not the practice. At the end of the day, Madam Deputy Speaker, we were elected by the people of Barbados to lead this country. The last thing that I will speak about, Madam Deputy Speaker, because the Leader of the Opposition spoke about welfare. And while this is a debate on fisheries, he tried to make a link between welfare and fish vendors and so on. And he said that there was a lady with 6 children who was only receiving $600 plus from the welfare department. Madam Deputy Speaker, I would have it be known that the government in the last 2 years has put the most money ever in the history of this country behind the welfare department, ever in the history of this country. The same could be said about fisheries. When you put $100 million in the blue economy, never has there been a government putting that kind of money in that space either. But we put, Madam Deputy Speaker, a significant amount of resources at the welfare department. And we found, Madam Deputy Speaker, there are 2 things occurring in this country. We have, not only at welfare department, we also had monies put through one family, which is separate and distinct. Another project, Madam Deputy Speaker, when we added up that adds. We had the Adopt a Family program, which also contributed to the well-being of people in this country. When you look at the combined pot of resources, there has never been a government that has done so much, Madam Deputy Speaker, for the vulnerable poor in this country. Never, ever before in the history of this country. But I would never say that more cannot be done. But it is our view that to build out a country, we need to offer training programs, which we are doing and have done. I just spent over lunch a conversation with the Honourable Member for St. James South, talking about some of those same training programs and how it is that we're going to take some of those hundreds, if not thousands, actually thousands of young persons and give them access to opportunity so that we break in a comprehensive way the cycle of poverty. This idea that for us to break the cycle of poverty, the only way to do it is to offer increased welfare is misleading. It is a combined, comprehensive response, Madam Deputy Speaker, of social policy, social development frameworks that would allow us to get our way out of this. And that is what this government is doing, Madam Deputy Speaker. So I am satisfied, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the bill that is before this chamber is appropriate for the times in which we live. I am satisfied, Madam Deputy Speaker, that what the government came to office to do is exactly what the government is doing in relation to improving the lives of persons who are involved in the fishing industry. I have seen plans, Madam Deputy Speaker, when they roll out, that will be so beneficial. You know, it is funny because I'm telling you that I think sometimes it is a case of misunderstanding or perhaps a case of not being able to accurately recall events that allows the opposition leader to conclude the things that he concludes. Because it is clear to me that all of us in this government knew full well that we were always concerned about the size of the space that we had at Bridgetown. We did not have to wait for the opposition leader to say Bridgetown was too compact. In fact, these are conversations we were having from the time we came into office. We had drawings, Madam Deputy Speaker. We looked at the costs and we looked at ways to being able to comprehensively build out. And I suspect in the next few years, under the leadership of the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central and the Honourable Prime Minister, that we will be able to build out that space, Madam Deputy Speaker, because it was the government's policy, not because it was something that was ranted, that was suggested, Madam Deputy Speaker, by the Leader of the Opposition after a hurricane last year. Look at what we said. These things, a lot of these things are in the manifesto that was signed on by the Honourable Leader of the Opposition. So these are not secrets. We did not come to office and implement a whole brand of secrets. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I close by saying this. And I say it first and foremost, well, not foremost, but first, to the Honourable Member responsible for fisheries. You are doing a good job. I am satisfied, and the country is satisfied, that you have put your heart and your soul into helping. Now, obviously, after you've lost everything, it is difficult for people. The Honourable Member for the Leader of the Opposition has said the people are not happy. The fishermen are not happy. But there are some who have said to me that they are satisfied. Obviously, everybody would like more to be done. I wish that we could do more. I wish that the government could do more. But fishermen are practical men, men of practical enterprise. Many of them have said, I wish more could be done, but we thank the government for what they have done. I actually saw a documentary on TV that said so. The fishermen themselves were saying so. So to come here and give the impression that nothing was done is misleading. So I want to tell the Honourable Member you are doing a good job. I want to say to the fisher folk that this government will stay by them. We remain committed to them, that their issues are our issues. The things that concern them concern us. I heard the Leader of the Opposition once say he has not come to politics to comfort the disturbed. Look at Hansard. We came to politics to comfort the disturbed. And if it disturbs the fisher folk, we will find a way to comfort them. I want to say to the staff who work in this space that it is not easy to come and to see that the work that you would have done is being pilloried in a way that was pilloried today for political purposes, but you are also doing a great job. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to thank the persons who work in fisheries because they do not get enough thanks. So we will continue, Madam Deputy Speaker, to do what we were called upon to do, to serve the people of this country. This bill, these two bills that are before the House, Madam Deputy Speaker, will go a long way to doing that, and I support these bills, Madam Deputy Speaker, wholeheartedly. Thank you.
Honourable Member for St. Lucie.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I rise to support this bill today, a bill which seeks to protect and assist the ordinary, what we may term as the ordinary person in this country, but very, very important people in this country. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to say out front that so important was this sector to this country that one of the first things this party did and the Honourable Prime Minister was instrumental in doing is to ensure that there was a Ministry of Maritime Affairs which was led, and ably so, by the Honourable Member for St. Michael South, who just spoke before me. But I am somewhat concerned as I've come to this chamber week after week after week, amidst the tremendous work that is being done by this administration, facing the various issues in this economy, Madam Deputy Speaker, and fixing them, putting things in place to correct the wrongs or to improve the lot of persons in this country. I am somewhat concerned that if you did not follow debates in this House, and if you did not follow what the government has been doing, when you listen to the leader of the opposition, you will feel that this is a government that is all over the place and that does not know what it's doing and that does not have the interest of the ordinary person at heart. I am reminded, Madam Deputy Speaker, when I come here so often, of a very popular comedy show on television which used to be shown a few years ago. It is called The Jeffersons. And when I look and I see the expression and the mannerisms and the conduct of the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, I would feel that the scouts of the scout, there's some scouts coming in from Hollywood trying to look for actors to fulfill the role of George Jefferson. And the Honourable Member for Christchurch South would fit that role quite well. I cannot understand, having been voted, elected to represent a constituency on a particular party ticket, because people believed in the policies that this party put forward, and determined that they, in that particular constituency, would support the Barbados Labour Party and who the person represents. That person at that point in time was the honourable member for Christchurch South, who now is the leader of the opposition. And I believe that persons are disappointed at the sad state of affairs today and are longing for the time to come when they will correct what they did back then because of what has happened over the last year or so from this side. And that you, rather than represent the people who voted for you on a particular party ticket, and they see demonstrated ever since then, there seems to be, even up to today, there seems to be this policy or practice by the honourable member that it is either his way or the highway. Every single policy this government or position this government has taken and has brought to this honourable chamber to help the ordinary persons out there, it is vilified. Honourable members on this side are cursed. This party, this government is cursed by the honourable member as though it is not doing anything for the people. I recall, Madam Deputy Speaker, that, and I do not intend to praise or propagate the happenings within the opposition, but it is clear for all to see. And I'm not going to fail to mention and talk about certain things, Madam Deputy Speaker, because the public of Barbados must know the truth. They must know exactly what is happening. They must not be allowed that the honourable member would come here and say all these things about these bad things about this administration, and no one stands to defend the administration. My colleagues on the front bench have been ably doing so. But there comes a time when the back bench must be heard as well. Because we are a team. And as I was saying that, we see demonstrated every week, and the ears of persons must be sore now, hearing the same thing, seeing the same thing, every single week. And you would not believe that this government has been doing tremendous work to advance the causes of the people of Barbados, the cause of the ordinary person in this country. In this case, today we are dealing with the fishermen, who have been great contributors to this economy. You would not believe, if you listen to this speech today and you've listened to other speeches before, that the same honourable member for Christchurch South is the one who was bitterly against the $5 million that was spent for the vendors at Oystens. You would not believe that, and all of a sudden, Madam Deputy Speaker, he seems to be John the Baptist, or want us to believe he's John the Baptist coming to rescue and speaking on the behalf of the ordinary person when he opposed, and the honourable member opposed what this government was doing earlier on the advent of World Cup, when we spent $5 million fixing stalls and painting the stalls and so on, giving the ordinary person, the vendors at our stands, whom he's supposed to be representing, the Honourable is supposed to be representing. When we spent $5 million fixing up their places of business and making them presentable as possible prior to World Cup. The World Cup when it came here, Madam Deputy Speaker. And having done that, Madam Deputy Speaker, we proceeded to do other projects. And right now, I'm sure the rest of Barbados will soon see a rollout, because we brought vending legislation, and we will soon see vending zones all across this country. We are working on the behalf of the people, Madam Deputy Speaker. So anytime the Honourable Member for Christchurch South comes to this Parliament, to make it look as though this administration is not doing anything on the behalf of the people of this country, it seems to be a case that it is like damned if you do, damned if you don't. We work and we do projects on the behalf of the small man, so to speak, and the opposition curse us for doing so. And they want to give the impression, as they have propagated for quite some time, that we are a government of the big person, but we are doing things, Madam Deputy Speaker, for the man at the lower echelons of the ladder, the lower rungs of the ladder. That is what this administration has been doing, so that these people can look forward in the future to the continued work of this administration. But I believe, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the Honourable Member came here today quite in a bind and quite uncomfortable, because when you look in today's nation, when you read in today's nation what the Honourable Member in his capacity of leader of the other party has presided over ever since he went to that, he left this side of the House. I recall a few months back then, one member whom he subsequently had expelled said from the time he came to this side, it has been trouble. Trouble. And if the Honourable Member is going to come here and attack this government for the wonderful things that they have been doing for the people of Barbados, then he owes the people of Barbados an explanation. He needs to talk to the people of Barbados. Mind your own business. Stop minding the business of this government. Mind your business and tell the people of Barbados what is happening. People are wondering. Tell them we're going at George Street. Stop minding Robert Street or Bay Street. And when you look, and if you were to see, Madam Deputy Speaker, what is happening, you pay attention to it. It appears that everywhere, true to what one of the members of that team at that point in time has said, every time you look, one day, week after week after week, there's problems. You have now a situation where the person who did, and I'm not here to promote anybody, but you got to talk the truth. And you have to call it as you see it. The person from that side then, who did better, I believe he would have done better than the honourable member for Christchurch South if he has remained on that side. Now there seems to be a problem there as well. And he needs to tell the people of Barbados, because if you're purporting to be the next leader of this country and you are trying to make person, because people are watching. People are watching. And they want to know, if you cannot leave a party of a few hundred persons, how can you lead a country of almost 300,000? And every time gets up to talk, does not put an idea, does not put any proposal, nothing on the table, except to strip and try to pull down. But the time will come soon. The time will come soon when the people of Barbados will expose you for who you are. And certainly, we on this side will expose and share with the people of Barbados all those things which have been done outside of their interests. The fishermen, the vendors, boat owners are indeed happy because this government, when they had to deal the aftermath of the hurricane, this administration has assisted and is still assisting. It's still assisting. And I want to thank the government. I want to say to the Honourable Minister, member for Christchurch West Central, the markets have been fixed. And you turn into the fish landing sites. I want you to remember the landing site at Half Moon Fort. I had spoken to the Honourable Member for St. Michael South when he was minister, and we want you to turn your attention to that. You can pass 6 Mains, and just there in Half Moon Fort where the fish landing site is, pay some attention to that and assist the vendors who are there and the persons who use that fish landing site ever so often. As required. So, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to support this bill wholeheartedly. This government is putting its money where its mouth is. It is not just talking. It is putting things in place to help the ordinary person. And I want to say this evening that I support this bill 1,000%. And whether I want to say to the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, no matter where you may run, if you want to run from where you are and run to St. John, St. Lucie. They got some rat bait up there. And St. John, like other places in Barbados, I know, and that is where perhaps the Honourable Member is in a pickle. They're all rat-proof. I thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker, for allowing me just to add my 2 cents worth to this debate. I commend the Minister highly, and I support this bill unreservedly. I thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker.
Our member for St. James Central.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I thank you for the opportunity to offer a few words in this debate. And I want to begin by apologizing to you, ma'am, because during the course of the day, I was compelled to use these premises as a place from which I had to participate in some meetings touching and concerning other areas of the productive sector. But it would have been impossible for me to be here today and not participate in this debate, a debate in which, ma'am, I want to place on the record immediately my own view as a minister, defined as senior minister with a responsibility for the productive sector, to say to this country through this place, ma'am, and through you, that I see this sector as being an emerging part of the nation's productive sector. Now let me start by saying, ma'am, we are legislating here an overhaul of, I think it is the 1993 Fisheries Act. And in so doing, ma'am, we are fundamentally transforming a sector which has historically only contributed around 1% of GDP, and transforming it, ma'am, to a place where it can achieve its fullest potential. Now, why do I start there, ma'am? I start there because I am cognizant, and this government by extension is cognizant of the fact, and more particularly the minister who so eruditely piloted this bill today has championed the fact that the marine space in Barbados is 425 times the size of our terrestrial space. Put otherwise, simply put, we got 425 times more water around this island than we have on the island itself. So it stands to reason, therefore, that the maritime space is literally pregnant with potential. And I don't have to go into all of the other things that the maritime space can do, because we live here and we see it. We see people using it for recreational purposes in tourism. We see people, ma'am, using it for the purposes of shipping. We see, ma'am, that there are other places in the world, and we too have the potential to explore at some point the gas that lies subterranean to the maritime space. In other words, under the ground. We see, ma'am, the opportunities which are evolving in technology for energy, renewable energy, and we know that we can put windmills in the sea and therefore, ma'am, generate electricity offshore in such a way as to make access to electricity more cost-effective for Barbadians. But what we have to do, ma'am, is to begin where it is the most easy. And this country has to come face to face, in my judgment, with the fact that we have a sector of people who historically, and I make no apology for saying it, let me say, ma'am, that in this debate, I will say clearly and unequivocally, I am speaking as part of a Labour Party, but I, ma'am, stand in the Labour Party on the left wing, on the Labour side of the Labour Party. And so therefore, ma'am, when I speak to this matter, I speak with a certain degree of passion because, ma'am, we have been content to treat the people who go to sea every blessed day of their life. Get up in the dark before 4 day morning, go 3, 4, 13, 30 miles off Barbados, ma'am, risking life and limb, day and night at sea, sometimes 3, 5 days in a week away from their home and their family. They bring back, ma'am, that substance which provides food safety for this country. That substance, ma'am, which provides, that product which provides nutritional security for this country. Ma'am, it costs the country no foreign exchange. This is what they contribute to ensuring that there is value for every family in Barbados which is interested in its personal health and well-being. By extension, ma'am, they have contributed to the cultural development of Barbados. And by extension, ma'am, let us not forget that in every stage, from the time the fish is caught and put on that boat, there is a step after step after step that contributes to employment, contributes to value added along a commercial line, a commercial chain. Madam Deputy Speaker, in spite of all of that, the sector and the people who work in that sector are treated as though they are at the bottom of the economic structure in Barbados. Now that can't, in my judgment, be good enough. And I feel today the same way I felt when I had the opportunity in the previous life of this administration to pilot the vendor's bill. And the two are very linked because they're about emancipating working class people from shackles, psychological shackles, ma'am, that have restrained their opportunity for upward social mobility in Barbados. I feel even more passionate about the fact that now we are passing pieces of legislation, a cognate debate, but the two are so inextricably linked, ma'am. The two pieces are so inextricably linked that we treat them as one. We are passing pieces of legislation that will now empower those who were treated as being at the bottom of the economic structure of this country and elevating them, ma'am, to earners of foreign exchange in Barbados, standing as they rightfully should have stood for years alongside all of the other major arteries of commerce in this country. Now, Madam Deputy Speaker, having said that, it is important to recognize, ma'am, that there were historically some inadequacies which confronted this sector and which any government that was right-minded and right-thinking needed to fix. And this is not the first time I'm saying that on the floor of this place. You know, the Prime Minister likes to tease me sometimes by telling me that every time we have a political meeting at Oystins, before I get to the podium, she knows what my speech is going to be. Because many a time there and in here, ma'am, I have spoken to the fact that there is a concept known as sanitary and phytosanitary measures, a lovely way of saying that you have to have consideration for food safety. And that therefore, ma'am, if you can take the idea and the ideal of food safety and bring it to bear on international and national commerce, national business, that you can, ma'am, unleash opportunities for people engaged in the food sector. But this is part of what this is about. And one of the things that this government must remind Barbadians about, not the least of whom will be the leader of the opposition, is that a few months ago, the Minister of Agriculture came here and passed a piece of legislation which was a humbug to Barbados for all of its existence as an independent state. The fact, ma'am, that we had cows about here that producing milk but we could not take any milk-based product and export it over into the wider world because we did not satisfy the requirements for sanitary and phytosanitary measures in trade. We had chickens running about in every yard, Madam Deputy Speaker, but we could not take any protein and sell it anywhere in the world because we could not satisfy the sanitary and phytosanitary measures. And in every coastal community, Madam Deputy Speaker, we had fishermen who catching fish day and night, but we could not take that which they caught and sell to the rest of the world because we did not satisfy sanitary and phytosanitary measures. And we were content in not doing that because we were a country that laid back in complacency, mercantilist complacency. The merchants in Bridgetown will bring in everything and we will spend all of our foreign exchange. And the merchants in Bridgetown will live in the lap of luxury, Mr. Speaker, sir, Madam Deputy Speaker, ma'am. And those people who toiled, whether it be in the agricultural field, as I say, raising the chickens and feeding the cows, or in the fishing industry, they were treated as second-class citizens economically. Can't work, ma'am. This piece of legislation now is to be married with the sanitary and phytosanitary legislation which is already passed. And once you understand that marriage, ma'am, you understand now that there is a whole wave of opportunity that has been unleashed. And so when I go back to Oystins to speak, I don't have to give the same speech about wishing and hoping and wanting and expressing a vision for there to be export potential. I can now speak to the export potential that will exist from this moment forward. And that is why, ma'am, we took the pains of fixing all the fish markets. I heard several speakers today refer to them. Let us not see that as standing in splendid isolation. It is part of a development plan, a development trajectory, that you wanted to have those steel basins, those wash-down basins, ma'am, because if you put fish on this piece of wood here, the blood will go into the grain. In an open-air fish market, ma'am, you're going to have the flies coming on top of the wood grain that is bloodied. And those people who study the sanitary and phytosanitary measures will say, that ain't good enough. Change of temperature in some markets, ma'am. The boat comes in and the fish is on the ice, but it goes in the hot sun and the fish moves from the ice to room temperature and then even warmer than room temperature. And then, ma'am, you cut it up and so on and you put it there for sale. And the people will say the temperature has not been consistent and therefore there may be a challenge to the quality of that which you are eating. All of these are issues, ma'am, about which we failed to educate the wider society, and government after government in this place since independence must now stand condemned for having chosen to remain silent with their tongues collectively cleaved to the roofs of their mouths. And for the first time in the history of Barbados today, we have come to a point, ma'am, where this fishing sector, this fishing industry, is now being given an opportunity to enter into the full light of day. I am proud to be part of a government today which is doing this type of work. We are also, ma'am, repairing, therefore, some inadequacies in the regulatory framework that touched and concerned fishing. And, ma'am, these things are wide. They touch a number of issues. And I want, ma'am, to say to you that, the work that we're doing here today, we're not alone. St. Vincent, to be honest with you, did some of this a while ago in terms of the refurbishment of their fish markets. In fact, the first time I saw the steel basins and the tables and the washdown basins and so on, Prime Minister Gonzalez took me on a tour of a fish market and showed me this thing. And I said, but why is it that we had not been doing this in Barbados? And the reason, ma'am, that I go there all the time is this. That in 2007, the European Union had a team of people here in Barbados who did an assessment of our capacity. And they said to us then, we'll be going into a partnership, economic partnership with Europe. And Europe will purchase the fish as much as we can produce. But we had to be able to meet certain basic requirements. And ma'am, we are at this point in 2025 where we should have been in 2008. So the first thing that this government has to take some credit for, I believe, ma'am, is the fact that, there was a lost decade in between there. And then we would have been able to do far more, far faster, I believe, had it not been for COVID. But even during COVID, you have heard the litany of comments today about all the markets that have been repaired even during COVID. In Paynes Bay, my constituency, ma'am, that was done during COVID. And a spokesperson for the Democratic Labour Party cursed this government in Paynes Bay, said that the work is creating too much dust, and so it shouldn't be being done. That was the level of ignorance. That's the level of ignorance that passes, ma'am, for an understanding of governance in Barbados. And we heard some of it today from the lips of he who leads the opposition. And ma'am, while I mention him, because he who misleads, and I ma'am, must tell you, I listened to him talk about the fact that, let me not talk about him. Let me say, ma'am, that there are a number of other countries in this region that are struggling to get where we have gotten today. Ma'am, I want to tell you for a fact that the fisheries management bill in Trinidad and Tobago was tabled in that House of Assembly in the year 2020. You hear what I tell you? In 2020, 5 years ago, ma'am, and it still has not been able to pass the Parliament of Trinidad and Tobago. It here today, and will pass this place today. The Fisheries Amendment Act in 2023 in St. Lucia, ma'am, still not to the quality of where we are today. Belize has a piece of legislation that was passed in 2020, falls short. And the minister who did such an excellent job in piloting this bill referred to the international sentiment about it. Now, I know for a fact that he ain't telling lies, because, ma'am, it was through me that he got to the international community. It is through me, ma'am, that certain foreign pairs of eyes were able to read the legislation and share their judgment on it. And it would be remiss of me not to speak to that fact today, because when he said that they gave it an instantaneous clean bill of health, he spoke, ma'am, in a very tepid and albeit sincere, a very tepid and self-effacing way. What they actually said, ma'am, was that this is the best-in-class legislation. It is a model to the world. Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, I, as I said, may have been spared much of the Honourable Member's speech. But, ma'am, during my meetings, I made it a point to listen to some of the things that were being said. For example, I took a break for lunch, and I had 15 minutes for lunch, ma'am. 1-5. And during those 15 minutes, I listened to a leader of the opposition lamenting the fact that in the legislation there is a provision for criminal penalty to be associated with certain types of behavior in the fish market. Mm-hmm. And for that, he indicts the whole government and suggests, ma'am, that doing so much for the fisheries sector in Barbados are holding people in a degree of contempt. No, ma'am, I'm not talking about mischievous. I call it ignorance in high places. And I want to say, ma'am, that the Democratic Labour Party still persists in this instinct of wanting to take a low road to high office. Well, Madam Deputy Speaker, I want you to apply your heart to wisdom. If you are selling cars, you are not going to have any legislation about likelihood of violent activity, because you got some cars there, people walking in between the motor cars, the cars parked, it ain't going away. If you are, ma'am, going into a vendor's mall or a craft a craft market. Ma'am, people are sitting down among the craft and they're showing you what they make, the necklace and the leather bracelet. You see me in one all the time, ma'am, I got on today, and all the different nice pieces. Oh, ma'am, then the issue about potential violence. But ma'am, when you are in a market setting anywhere in the world, you are dealing with a set of people who are, by virtue of the tools of trade, armed with a long knife to cut the fish. A cutlass in your hand, that is your tool of trade. And so therefore, ma'am, there must be a provision, and it is to be found in every piece of fisheries legislation that I know of on planet Earth, and I have been practicing law in this country, ma'am, for in excess of 20 years, that you want to ensure as a means of protection to the public and to people in the market itself, that if for any reason a noise or dispute breaks out and people are armed as part of their tool of trade, that an unfortunate situation does not take place. We have seen it happen in markets here. No, Madam Deputy Speaker, it boggles the mind when we are talking about a piece of legislation that is targeted at the transformation economically of a sector of people that have been rooted at the bottom of the socio-economic ladder in Barbados. That you don't want to confront that painful and agonizing social reality, but that you want to focus, ma'am, on a whimsical nonsense, a nonsense about what may or may not be an interpretation. And when guided by the acting leader of government business, he retreats into the fact that he has an opinion and he knows that his opinion could be ruled out of order. No, ma'am, that does not matter for me. I say this, that I also heard him talk about this government doing nothing for fishermen. No, it didn't take a lot of time. There's a fellow called Google. I went on this fellow called Google, ma'am. I hold him here in my hand. And in 5 minutes, ma'am, I was able to go back through the life of this administration. Duty-free concessions on gear and equipment to the fishery sector. We ain't do nothing. According to him, ma'am, we ain't do nothing. Ma'am, you would be surprised to discover that this government that ain't do nothing for fishermen in Barbados has put in place an annual maintenance subsidy to support repairs to vessels. An annual subsidy, ma'am. He says, ma'am, that we don't do anything for the fishery sector, but yet still there is subsidized ice to be found in the markets of this place. And I believe that that may have begun, ma'am, and during the tenure not of this illustrious minister, but his predecessor. Or maybe, ma'am, a subsidized fish vendor market space rental. No, ma'am, I didn't have to Google this because I know I was part of it. That during COVID, when everything was shut down, business interruption benefits were offered to the fisheries sector. We subsidize lockers, ma'am. We subsidize haul-out operations. Madam Deputy Speaker, you would be stunned to realize that there is VAT-free fuel offered to the fisheries sector. But the government don't do nothing. Ma'am, there's a vessel lifting rebate to lift vessels out of the water, not to put them on Parkinson School field, not to put them on Foundation School playing field, but, ma'am, to lift them out of the water and put them in a place of certain safety.
11.
I listened to the Honourable Member St. Michael South on that point. I don't have to go further. Except to say, ma'am, that I honestly believe that the Honourable Leader of the Opposition is sometimes wedded to a form of midsummer's madness. If I had said it, ma'am, if I was he and I had said, well, you should take them out of the water and put them on a playing field. And then it was drawn to me how foolish that statement is. I would have had the humility to say, or perhaps ought not to have said that. I wouldn't double down or triple down or quadruple down on it. But, ma'am, there is free vessel inspection, free fishing vessel inspection, free registration of fisheries workers, free berthing at landing sites and fishing harbor, free docking in the boatyards, grants to fisherfolk organizations, ma'am, subvention to the Barbados National Union of Fisherfolk organizations, and duty-free on boats 4 years and younger. And I don't want to go on and on. Madam Deputy Speaker, I want to say to you, though, that I want to come to the wider point for me, and this is the export market opportunity. Ma'am, there's a thing called illegal, unreported, and unregulated fishing. Simply put, I can use the example of some of the trawlers that come down this side of the world from places in Asia. And I suppose as foreign minister, I should not use this place to lambaste anybody's government. But we know, ma'am, that they come armed with 5-mile drift nets, raking up everything in the water and along the ocean floor in some cases. Weighted nets. And you take the little babies, you take those that ain't mature yet, and you take those that mature. They take the endangered species, ma'am, and those that are not endangered. And ma'am, the difficulty that we have is that we have to find a way of ensuring that that type of fishing is now regulated and that the species which are endangered are protected, ma'am. This piece of legislation speaks directly to that. And if there's no other reason why this legislation should shout out, scream out for support, ma'am, is the fact, ma'am, that it allows for us to have a sector which is now properly managed. And in addition to that, it allows, ma'am, now in a legislated way for our own weaknesses to be corrected. You know, for a long time, ma'am, everybody knew about fishing, but nobody was talking about the way we manage the resource. For a long time, ma'am, we know that people going to sea, but we ain't talking, ma'am, about the way in which the gear is maintained, that the boats themselves have to be properly maintained. Madam Deputy Speaker, we are talking about a sector, ma'am, now that is going to be able to see the registration of vessels, both local and international. I want to say, ma'am, that the legislation that we see here today will shortly be joined, once it comes through Cabinet in a little while, with a review of the maritime boundaries legislation, where I, ma'am, will be going to my colleagues in Cabinet to secure their imprimatur and support, because we must now raise the level of penalties for people who violate our maritime space. And the little incy-wincy sum of money that is there, ma'am, we will make a recommendation for it to be substantial, large, and therefore, ma'am, the penalty for doing these things must be greater. Now, ma'am, to better protect the environment, we're going to have fishing trawlers code of operations and focus on the earning viability of the fishing community and the environmental sustainability. Ma'am, I could think of nothing that has been more wholesome for this sector than these particular pieces of legislation. They are pieces of legislation, ma'am, which in my judgment have been long overdue. As I said to you, ma'am, they are holistic in the sense that they are speaking not only to the issues we have now, they are also addressing the sustainability issues that all of us must speak to, apparently except for the Democratic Labour Party in this time of climate crisis. Ma'am, it also is speaking to the value added of boat building, ma'am, fishing gear, manufacture, ma'am, management of the resource, data collection, another weakness that we've had, and I can go on and on. Madam Deputy Speaker, I do not know that there has been at any stage in Barbados pieces of legislation that have so coalesced at one point in order to be an empowering impulse to a sector that is vital, none can deny, but a sector, ma'am, that has been crying out for empowerment. And I am privileged, ma'am. The only thing that I am sorry about is that I could not speak longer in this debate. But I want to warmly support it, I want to warmly welcome it, and I want to totally congratulate the Honourable Minister who has brought it here, and his entire staff, and all of those who have worked on this in the fisheries sector. I'm obliged to you, ma'am.
Honourable Minister of Tourism.
Thank you, Madam Deputy Speaker. I too rise to speak in this debate and to join with other honourable members who have spoken in respect of this bill. Indeed, I want to support the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill, and to say that the honourable member for Christchurch West Central has done a remarkable job in presenting to this honourable chamber the key components of this bill. But I must also congratulate the honourable member as well for setting the record straight. And I shall endeavour this evening as well to also show the contrast between the policies of a former Democratic Labour Party government and what this Barbados Labour Party administration has done. I know, Mr. Speaker, oftentimes you believe that history perhaps is repeating itself, because we recall when we had Hurricane Jeanette, we were faced with a similar position, but I will come back to that. But suffice to say that the framework for strengthening linkages between tourism and fisheries must be commended. Of course, we all know about the sustainable fish tourism as framed in the bill. It will certainly redound to the benefit of the tourism sector, as well as to the local coastal and fishing communities, as well as for local domestic tourists as well, and tourists as well. Of course, the fish tourism includes not only maritime and freshwater fishing, but it also includes diving, exchange of fisheries, oriented cultural experiences, and of course, the sharing of traditional fisheries knowledge. Madam Deputy Speaker, I think it is well known all over the world that whenever you have any event or relating to fish, you always recognize that there's always a wonderful opportunity to showcase what you have. I recall, Mr. Speaker, Madam Deputy Speaker, I apologize. If you've been to Seattle, you will see that there was Pipes Fish Market. And as a result of Pipes Fish Market there, they would have developed a lot of motivational material. But I also allowed at that fish market in Seattle, in Washington, an opportunity for visitors to that state to go to go to the fish market and experience and have the experience of their lifetime. And I firmly believe that the plan set out in this bill will certainly help us to promote more of what we consider to be fish tourism as we continue our development. It is well known that there are a number of visitors who go to a destination and they seek out new and unique experiences. And of course, we can continue to generate even more revenue, not only from coastal areas where people depend on, for their livelihood, of course, on fisheries. In Barbados, we have a perfect mecca, as I refer to it sometimes, at oysters, where people have made not only earnings and a livelihood of that particular area, but that it has now become so iconic in Barbados that you have tourists on any given night, but in particular a night like tonight, Friday night, visiting the Oystins Beer Gardens and having the lifetime of their experience, thereby contributing to even more of a positive experience of Barbados. And when we look at all that we've done, and in particular, recognizing what we did here a couple weeks ago, when we passed the Maritime Underwater Heritage Bill, a framework for developing Barbados's maritime heritage tourism sector. When that was passed in here and I spoke to the issues, I would have gone and I would have spoken at length about some of the opportunities. And therefore, when the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central spoke earlier today, he spoke with passion, he spoke with a sense of commitment that I'm sure that all of us within the Labour Party, and for that, must be proud of. And therefore, I know that the fisher folk in Barbados will continue to recognize all that he continues to do for the sector. But, Madam Deputy Speaker, there's one thing, and it has to do with the political history and the political record of the Barbados Labour Party. And I sat here and I took a few notes because it was absolutely important that we, in this Barbados Labour Party, that we continue to demonstrate our sincerity in terms of our long-term commitment, our growth, and the development of our fishing industry. And I know, Mr. Speaker, that when Madam Deputy Speaker, when we had Hurricane Beryl, it was one of those occasions where perhaps people initially, because whenever you have a crisis and you respond immediately, some people will criticize you and they will say that you did not attempt to manage it as smoothly as you would want. But at the end of the day, we are confident that the fishing fort now, based on what the minister and other members of his team would have done to not only to mitigate the crisis at hand, but to also demonstrate the support for the fishing sector. I recall, Madam Deputy Speaker, and the Barbados Labour Party has a very proud record of this. I'm sure that we will recall that when the late Sir Grantley Herbert, now the Right Excellent Sir Grantley Adams, entered the House of Assembly back in 1934, representing the parish of St. John, he did so, and what he also did in addition to advancing a number of opportunities, he was perhaps one of the first persons who ensured that he advanced the interests of fisherfolk in Barbados. And by that, you recall when the Universal Adult Suffrage Bill was passed back in 1951, that with the attainment of ministerial government in 1954, that the late Right Excellent Sir Grantley Herbert Adams would have appointed Sir Elway Tama as the first minister of fisheries. And I say all that to say that from way back, from the introduction of ministerial government in Barbados, the Barbados Labour Party recognized that we had to have as ministerial responsibility someone capable of leading fisheries. And therefore, when we look at what we have accomplished over those years, you recall, Madam Deputy Speaker, that way back then, persons used to go and sail in what you call a sailboat. And then the Barbados Labour Party, through one of its leaders, the Right Excellent Sir Grantley Adams, pioneered the introduction of motorized fishing boats, as it were, in Barbados. And he did this because it was absolutely necessary that we demonstrate to the world that we could also catch up with the times and give people not only the livelihood that they required, but also introduce an aspect of safety. Because you recall when you go out to sail on a sailboat, that fishermen at that time could have only gone out for maybe a maximum of 4 hours offshore, and then they will have to return onshore with its challenges. But with the introduction of motorized boats, it was also an opportunity for fishermen now to even advance to sea, but do so in a very safe way. And therefore, when we had Hurricane Janet in 1955, again, we were faced with a similar situation where boats were damaged. And those boats that were damaged, the Barbados Labour Party administration at the time pursued policies not only in recognition of motorized vessels, but also provided loans back then for the fisherfolk who were badly affected by Hurricane Janet to ensure that they maintained their livelihood. And the Barbados Labour Party did so, not only to improve the debt, not only to improve of locals, but to improve the livelihood of persons, but also as an opportunity to build out the fisheries section as a department as an opportunity for more employment. I may also add, Madam Deputy Speaker, that in 1942, the Barbados Labour Party made sure that we had a loan facility to replace and repair fishing boats damaged by rough seas. We also had, back in 1944, the widening of the channel at landing sites at Concept Bay and the Crane. We also, in 1945, had for the first time established fishing as an industry in Barbados, in the Barbados Development Plan. And of course, we recall what happened in 1946 when we opened the first fish market. And Madam Deputy Speaker, you may ask, why am I going back to the history? Because it's important to show the contrast between what occurred then, what we have done as a government, as an administration, and what we are seeking to build out today. And when we look and see what we're doing today, Madam Deputy Speaker, we are now faced with Hurricane Beryl and the effects that it had on the coastline, and particularly the fisher folk. The minister, along with the Prime Minister, would have put together, and the cabinet, of course, approving it, would have put together a package for the fisher folk in Barbados, as we did during the passage of Hurricane Janet, as we've done when there were rough seas, where we provided loans and other incentives. The Barbados Labour Party government, led by the minister responsible for fisheries, the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central, set about in earnest to ensure that the fisher folk in Barbados had not only financing, but that they also had the equipment to haul out the boats from the sea, to take them to wherever they had to be repaired, in order for us to ensure that we maintain a fishing sector. And when you look back and see what the Honourable Member has done, I recall when I passed Fontebelle, and if you look, and if you come through by the Port Authority area, you look left or right, and you have seen a number of fishing vessels that were there under repair. And when you pass there today, you can see the difference. The fact that the fishing boats are being repaired, they're being returned to sea, and what we are witnessing, especially with a very vibrant tourism sector, that the fishermen are going to work, they're fishing, they're landing the fish, and of course they're selling the fish not only to the locals, but they're also selling, as they have done for years, selling the fish to the tourism, the hotel sector. And I'm saying that the Honourable Member has to be congratulated, because he's done an outstanding job in leading the recovery efforts. And therefore, the recovery efforts that we have seen today is as a direct result of his tenacity, his hard work, and his diligence in ensuring that we recover, and we recover in a very good position. So the recovery, Madam Deputy Speaker, has gone very well. And that is a credit, like I said, to the minister and his team. And therefore, if we want to sustain an industry, we can only sustain an industry if you are faced with a crisis, that you recover from the crisis, but then you also take additional measures to sustain the fishing sector. And that is what the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central has been doing. And Madam Deputy Speaker, I even go so far to say that this Barbados Labour Party has a wonderful record. For example, the Barbados Port Inc., as we call it, the Bridgetown Port, would have made several investments into the fishing sector. For example, at Pile Bay, there was an investment out of his corporate social responsibility plan. It made a substantial investment to improve Pile Bay to what it is today. They also did a similar thing in Western at the Millie Eiffel complex. They have also gone all across Barbados, and they have been investing as part of their corporate social responsibility into plant and also infrastructure, a modern infrastructure, to ensure that the fisher folk have facilities that are, of course, not only modern, but that are first class. And I say all of that, Madam Deputy Speaker, as the minister now continues to build and secure not only Barbados' coastline, and the inner fishing basin over at the fisheries complex. Because the minister and the public must know this. The minister would have spearheaded with the assistance of the port, right? A vessel, the MV Bay Pearl. And the MV Bay Pearl came to Barbados with 38,000 tons of granite boulders. And a lot of stones, and Madam Deputy Speaker, when you pass the mighty Grenier Highway, if you're heading to Bridgetown, and you look to your left just before the traffic lights, you will see some stones there that you would not imagine that when you look at that weight would have been carried on a ship. But it's a fact. On the Bay Pearl, and it came through the Bridgetown port, offloaded with all that weight, which tells you something about the Deepwater Harbor that the Barbados Labour Party administration constructed, led by Sir Grantley Herbert Adams at the time, right? And when you look and you see that as a result, and Barbadians perhaps would ask, why is it that you have so much stone there? But what the minister is doing is that he secured an order of stone. He got the stone to Barbados safely, offloaded in some very heavy-duty trucks, transported to the holding area, and those stones will leave there, go in an area within what we call the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex. And why is the minister doing this for the fisher folk? He's doing this to secure not only the inner basin, but to ensure we build some resilience so that in the event that, and we never know, madam, and we never know the waves that will sometimes come upon us. But what the minister is doing with his team is that he's now trying to reinforce, as I would say, ring fence the area within the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex to ensure that in the event that we have a similar occurrence or similar event of whatever nature, that at least the wave energy will be contained, and therefore it would not have the impact that it had when we had Hurricane Beryl coming through. And this again, taking you back to history, is but another extension of the legacy of the Barbados Labour Party as it relates to fishing. And that no member of the Democratic Labour Party or any other critic can come in here and lay claim to a legacy that was started by the Barbados Labour Party, like I said, under the late, right excellent Grantley Herbert Adams. And we have to make sure that we say these things, because when the Deepwater Harbor was built, I believe it was built at the time at a cost of about $18 million. And today the Deepwater stands head and shoulders, although it needs some expansion. But it has never wavered, Madam Deputy Speaker. So the minister is now here faced with an infraction that occurred. He must now fix, and he's going to fix it. And at the end of the day, the fisher folk of Barbados, and particularly those who use the facility at the Bridgetown Fisheries Complex, will be extremely proud when they see what will be done there to help them secure not only their future, not only their fishing vessels, but also to ensure that the legacy of fishing remains strong in Barbados. And I want to thank the Honourable Member for Christchurch, West Central, again, because he needs to be thanked, because the amount of work that he's done within the fisheries sector, he must be commended. And I say to the Honourable Member that there will come a time, and he has to talk, Madam Deputy Speaker, and perhaps the time is right even for a fishing museum, because with all the work that has been done and the proud legacy of the Barbados Labour Party and all that we have done, and of course even without iconic flying fish and all the able seamen and other fishermen who have made a major contribution to Barbados, ought to be recognized for all that they have done within the fishery sector of Barbados. And I say to the minister that the fisher folk must thank you for not only the business interruption benefit that you provided them, not only with all the financial assistance, but all the work that you have done within the Division of Fisheries to ensure that you create a sustainable future for fishermen. And that is what, in part, this bill is about. This is not only about billing out opportunities for advancement, but it's also thinking about how sustainable we can and should be as a people in Barbados. And this sector, a very powerful sector in my view, because not only does it feed the population, not only does it allow for us to engage in advanced commerce, but what it does, Madam Deputy Speaker, is that it allows Barbadians to lay claim of a famous legacy. And I say to honourable members, and I will wind up, Madam Deputy Speaker, because I didn't intend to delay the House unduly, but it must be said. It must be said. And if any member decides to come in here and to criticize the efforts of what have been done, then in effect what they're doing is that they are criticizing the fishing sector. But if you come in here and say that you object to anything that was done in the Division of Fisheries insofar of the recovery efforts, then it is to say that you are not supportive of the fishing community, you are not supportive of the fishermen, and by extension, you have no vested interest in ensuring that the fish, that the fishermen go there and catch and bring to shore to help us not only with our dietary requirements, but to ensure that we can also even engage in exports and earn even more money from this sector. So I say, have no fear. The fishing folk, the Barbados Labour Party has always been there with you. The Barbados Labour Party will continue to be there with you. Any responsible government owes it to the fisher folk of Barbados not only to build sustainability, not only to build resilience, but to ensure that we carry forward the good work. And as we continue to contrast the work that we have done, and we have done a hell of a lot of work in the maritime sector, so much so that when you go back and check the records, back in 2018, you had a Democratic Labour Party administration that came to office between 2008 and 2018, and it was left to the Barbados Labour Party government when they came in 2018 to have an audit of everything that was required to be done within the maritime sector. And it was this Barbados Labour Party that took that audit after they had it completed and addressed a series of actions in order to ensure that we position the maritime sector to where it ought to be. And I will commend not only the member for Christchurch West Central, but also the member for St. Michael's South, who would have laid the groundwork for a lot of the work that you see us doing in the maritime sector. And there are several, and even though we've passed almost 9 bills debated in this chamber last year, another one earlier this year, but more to come, Madam Deputy Speaker, because when you look at the record of legislation, when you contrast the record of the Barbados Labour Party in terms of its legislative agenda in respect of maritime, and you cross-examine the record of the Democratic Labour Party, then certainly, Madam Deputy Speaker, you can say there's absolutely no comparison whatsoever. And that is the difference between a government that comes to work and work hard on behalf of its citizens versus those who would prefer to just utter some words in the hope that they will get a few votes, Madam Deputy Speaker. So therefore, we will go forth with faith, we will go forth with conviction and courage, knowing, and the fisher folk must know this as well, that their future is very safe with the Barbados Labour Party, and that the Barbados Labour Party shall never let them down. If we didn't let them down back in the 1940s and 50s, it will be a shame if we do so now, and we have no intentions of doing so. So I say to you, Madam Deputy Speaker, I say to this chamber, I commend the bill. I thank the minister and his team for the incredible hard work. I thank the officers at the Chief Parliamentary Counsel's Office and the Attorney General's Chambers for all the hard work that they have done, not only in respect of this bill, but also other bills for the maritime sector that will continue to create that niche for Barbados. So I commend this bill, and I want to say, Madam Deputy Speaker, that the fisher folk can be rest assured that they are in safe hands with the Barbados Labour Party, and they need not look elsewhere. I'm obliged.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move the suspension in chamber until 6:45. For 5 minutes until 6:45.
Honourable members, the question is that this honourable chamber now make a break for 5 minutes. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber will now break until 6:45. This session is resumed.
Madam
Honourable
Deputy
Member
Chair,
for Christchurch West End.
Madam Deputy Chair, thank you. We had a long, exhausting day. As I say thanks to you, I also want to say thanks to all those honourable members who contributed today. The debate was indeed intense, it was informative, and it realized what it was supposed to do in terms of having meaningful discussions about those persons who we said from the inception that we will ensure that they don't only see the colors of blue, but they can recognize other softer colors as it relates to the visual spectrum. And I want to say today that there's one maxim that I want to start with. The heart that gives thanks is a happy heart. I want to say I have a happy heart before Happy Chambers today, after listening to the debate, a debate which touched on many, many issues as it relates to our fishing. But I want to make some corrections because it's important that truth be told to power. As I say thanks to CPC as well for the hard, diligent work that they have been doing with a number of legislation, I want to say thanks. And she has been here from since the nascent hours of the morning, bearing with us to give guidance and advice. I also want to thank the Permanent Secretary who is here in the ministry, the Chief Fisheries Officer, and the entire staff and those fisher folk who came out in support of this legislation. But since in the spirit of giving thanks, let us not forget those persons who donated unreservedly to the Benevolent Fund. Those persons, and I want to call them by name, the Contrast Foundation, they give $25,000. The government of Dominica, I want to say thanks on behalf of the government of Barbados to the government of Dominica for giving to the Benevolent Fund $737,028.30. Ian de Kwan Soon, he gave $1,990. Government of the Bahamas, $200,000. Cayman Islands, the Cabinet Office of the Cayman Islands, $400,000. CAF, which is the Development Bank of Latin America and the Caribbean, $500,000 or $500,000. The Rwanda High Commission, $619,731.04. And Rubis, the gas station as we know it, $5,000. A grand total of $488,749.34. Those persons give willingly. And I want to say thanks on behalf of my ministry and certainly the government of the day. There was a question from the Member of Parliament, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, about the legislation in terms of where aquaculture should be placed. And I want to remind that member that since the inception of the legislation, the Act, in 1993, aquaculture was placed in the belly of the Ministry of the Fisheries Division under the Fisheries Act. Aquaculture, which is the build-out, the development of anything in terms of the culturing and growth and development, production of anything in fresh water as it relates to species or animals or plants, etc. And that was the aquaculture bill. As I said, it started in that ministry. It continued even when you had the amendment in 2000. And I must dare say that it is now in this legislation. So that will bring closure to that aspect of it. And in 2016, the Honourable Member for Christchurch South, he made the comment that there were 1,100 vessels. And I suspect the comment was made in relation to how much vessels they have now. I must admit there were 1,100 registered vessels, but there were less than 300 active vessels. Today, as I speak, there are about 1,300 registered vessels, But only 312 or so active vessels. Registered vessels are vessels that are registered in the fisheries division, but it does not speak to those who are actively fishing. Some may be out of commission, some may be derelict, some may have been sold for whatever purpose, but they are not actively fishing. There are 312 today actively fishing, and the Member of Parliament for Christchurch South also made the point that there were 3,000 persons employed back in 2016 under another administration who were working, employed in the sector. Today, I want to say, today, the 7th of February in the year 2025 that God has given us, we have 6,000 people, double the amount, working in the fishing industry. I want to also say, because special mention was made of Section 5, which is this legislation speaking to the fact that we should have data collection. I want to say the importance of our data collection and our interest in collecting data is so that we can give account for our fisheries sector as it relates to our GDP, our growth. And so we can have that information and the right figure so that we can bring the truth as it relates to our GDP. And I want to say that that is the importance of, so we are not nitpicking, we are not in a witch hunt mechanism, trying to get information that is not important. We are using it because we understand the importance when we are speaking about GDP across this country. I want to also say that we've spoken about the insurance, and the Member of Parliament for St. Michael South, he gave us the chapter, verse, and scripture as it relates to insurance and the importance of having insurance as part of that, this whole bill dimension. I want to also say that for the good women in our fisheries sector, they are not need to fear about anything. Those that are young or old, because this minister is taking care of every single one of them. And I want to support and let Barbadians know that the Central Fish Processors Association in Bridgetown, that group that is responsible, that they do a fantastic job in terms of our just transition to a circular economy out of our fish offal and fish silage. I want to say to them to continue with zeal, zest, and gusto and energy, because they are doing a good work on behalf of this country as it relates to ensuring that we get profit from that which would normally go into our landfill. So they are reducing our landfill space, reducing the emission of biomethane and all those harmful gases, along with ensuring that at the end stage of production that we have something viable that can go back into our circular economy, because they are now making fertilizer, liquid fertilizer, out of fish offal. And I want to commend that all-female group, since this government is not doing anything for females, in partnership with FAO. That is what we are doing. Madam Deputy Chair, I won't belabor this chamber, but there's one thing I must comment about, and that is the fact that there was the accusation that there is a fish shortage in this country. I want to refer to the figures that were sent to me from the fisheries division. A fish shortage in this country, and yet, to date, we have recorded in terms of flying fish, 443,524 pounds thus far. We have, in terms of tuna, 365,050 pounds. Dolphin fish, 211,439 pounds. Amberfish, 70,870 pounds. And of course, barracuda, 58,376 pounds. Where is the shortage? And I want to go further, because you always compare with the year in front. In the year 2023, we're talking about estimated landings as it compared to this year. 2023, because there's a claim by the Member of Parliament for Christchurch South that there is a shortage of fish in Barbados. In 2023, the landings for flying fish, in terms of tons, the landings I see here, we landed 178 tons. So far for last year, there was the landing, and the figure here is 273. So you move from 178 to 273, yet there is a fish shortage in this country. Dolphin fish, landings for 2023, 144. Just gone down a little bit, 127 last year. The kingfish, last year in terms of tons, you had, in year 2023, 12 tons. In the year 2024, 22 tons, an increase, yet there's a fish shortage. In terms of shark, the year 2023, you have 5 tons landed. Last year alone, 12 tons. We are at the beginning of 2025. Tunas, in 2023, 223 tons. This, last year, 2024, 211. Where is the shortage, please? And the estimated landings for billfish, 29 tons in 2023, 24 in 2024. I can go on and go on and go on and show that there's very little separation in terms of quantities landed since 2023 till now. So to say that there's a fish shortage, Madam Deputy Chair, I will have to refute that because the evidence does not suggest that that is the situation in Barbados as I speak. I want to also thank those fisherfolk who have stood the course with us. The journey may not be for the swift, but it is indeed for those who can endure. And they have endured with us. They have shown that they have resilience, that they can mitigate the challenges that they may be faced in life, that they can adapt to the vagaries, and that they have the fortitude to survive against all obstacles. I am saying to them that we will continue to walk at their side in partnership because we understand that partnership, although it may sound like a big word, it essentially means having the wherewithal to walk side by side with persons to be able to carry them in their journey on their destination. We have a candle burning in this government and the dark tunnels of in any industry, and that candle is the candle of hope. The candle of hope will guide the fishermen to fertile ground. And I am saying that this government will continue to put our sweat expenditure to ensure that this industry, that those in the blue hydrosphere can now understand and appreciate the other colors of the visual color spectrum, including red. Ladies and gentlemen, Madam Deputy Speaker, I am obliged. Thank you.
All members?
I beg to move that this bill be now seconded. Read it second time.
The question is that this bill be now read the second time. All those honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Madam Deputy Chair, I beg that you now leave the chamber and this house be resolved in committee. The chair, and this house will be resolved in committee. I know that you will not be mindful to leave the chamber.
Question is that I don't know.
Don't leave the chair.
Question is that I do not leave the chair, and this house, this honorable chamber dissolves itself in committee on this bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Those against, please say no. We think the ayes have it. This honorable chamber now stands in committee.
This honorable house is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, this bill has 444 clauses and I think 45 parts. So in an attempt to shorten the process, we're going to call a chunk of parts. Because there's an amendment at clause 1, we are going to do part 1, clauses 1 to 4. There's an amendment at clause 1.
Chair, I beg that. I beg to move that. Clause 1, part 1, clause, right. Clause 1 as amended, stand par.
The question is that part 1, clauses 1 to 4 as amended, stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 2 to 6, clauses 5 to 27.
I beg that part 2 to 6, clauses 5 to 27, stand par.
Question is that part
2 to 6.
2 to 6,
Clauses
clauses 5 to 27, stand part. All members in favor, please say aye. All members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 7 to 10, clauses 28 to 50.
I move that clause, part 7 to 10, clauses 28 to 50, stand par.
Question is that part 7 to 10, clauses 28 to 50, stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 11 to 15, clauses 51 to 126.
Mr. Chair, I beg that part 11 to 15, clauses 51 to 126, stand par.
Question is that part 11 to 15, clauses 81 to 126.
51
to 126, stand part. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Part 16 to 20, clauses 127 to 222.
Mr. Chair, I beg that part 16 to 20, clauses 127 to 222, stand par.
The question is that part 16 to 20, clauses 127 to 222, stand par. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 21 to 26, clauses 223 to 275.
Mr. Chair, I beg that part 21 to 26, clauses 223 to 275, stand par.
The question is that part 21 to 26, clauses 223 to 277.
75.
275 stand par. All honorable members in favor, say aye. All members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 27 to part 35, clauses 276 to 348.
Mr. Chair, I beg that part 27 to part 35, clauses 276 to 348, stand par.
The question is that part 27 to 35, clauses 276 to 348, stand par. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, you say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 36 to 45, clauses 349 to 444.
Mr. Chair, I beg that part 36 to part 45 and clauses 349 to 444 stand par.
The question is the part 36 to 45, clauses 349 to 444 stand par. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, please say aye. Aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Fourth schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill.
The question is that the fourth schedule be the fourth schedule to the bill. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chair, I now wish that you do report progress, that you do leave the chair and Mr. Chair, I want to report the passing of one bill in committee with amendment.
The question is that I do not report to Her Honor the Deputy Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with amendments. All honorable members in favor, say aye. Aye. Honorable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honourable members, the chairman of committee has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee with an amendment.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg to move that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read the third time. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those members against, please say nay. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Deputy Chair, I want to move, I beg that this bill do not pass and be cited as the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development Bill 2025, sorry, and the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development.
The question is that this bill be now passed and so cited. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited.
Order number 6, ma'am. In the name of the Honourable Minister of the Environment and National Beautification, Green and Blue Economy, to move the second reading of the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development, Seafood Markets and Businesses Bill 2024.
Madam Deputy Chair,
Honourable member.
I move that this bill be read a second time.
The question is that this bill be now read the second time. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. Honourable member?
Madam Deputy Chair, I now ask that you leave the chair and the House be resolved in committee.
The question is that I now leave the chair and the House. This House be in committee. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This honourable chamber is now in committee.
This Honourable House is now in committee.
Mr. Chairman, similarly, this is not as long, but you call them parts as well. Part 1, clauses 1 and 2.
Mr. Chair, I beg that Part 1, Clause 1 be amended with amendment and Clause 2 stand par. And the amendment is for 2024 to 2025.
The question is that Part 1, clauses 1 to 2 with amendment stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 2 to 4, clauses 3 to 20.
Mr. Chair, I beg that Part 2 to 4, clauses 3 to 20 stand par.
The question is that Part 2 to 4, clauses 3 to 20 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Parts 5 to 8, clauses 21 to 45.
Mr. Chair, I beg that Part 5 to 8, clauses 21 to 45 stand par.
The question is that Parts 5 to 8, clauses 21 to 45 stand part. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
First schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill.
The question is that the first schedule be the first schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Second schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill.
The question is that the second schedule be the second schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Third schedule.
Mr. Chair, I beg that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill.
The question is that the third schedule be the third schedule to the bill. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, please say no. We think the ayes have it.
Report.
Mr. Chair, I beg now that you report progress to Mr. Chair, I beg that you report the passing of one bill into committee to the Deputy Chair, Deputy Speaker.
The question is that I do now report to Her Honour the Deputy Speaker the passing of one bill in committee with amendments. All honourable members in favour, say aye. Honourable members against, say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Honourable members, the chairman of committee has reported to me the passing of one bill in committee.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg that this bill be read a third time.
The question is that this bill be read the third time. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Madam Deputy Speaker, I beg that this bill be now passed and cited as the Sustainable Fisheries Management and Development, Seafood Markets and Business Act 2025.
The question is that this bill be now passed and so cited. All honourable members in favour, please say aye. All those members against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it. This bill is now passed and so cited. Honourable member for Christchurch East.
Madam Deputy Speaker, with that, we've come to the end of the business for today. It has been a very, very long day, Madam Deputy Speaker. I'm almost curious to see the newspaper tomorrow morning. But it's been a long and productive day. We want to thank the Honourable Member for Christchurch West Central for his presentation today in what was a very technical presentation. He handled it like a master. So I just wish to congratulate him on the presentation of what will probably go down as the Adrian Ford bill. And I beg to move that this chamber be now adjourned until Tuesday, the 11th day of February at 10 in the forenoon.
Honourable member, the question is that this honourable chamber be now adjourned until Tuesday,
11th.
the 11th of February at 10 o'clock
In the forenoon.
in the forenoon. All honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no.
I think the ayes have it. No, they had ayes. No. Aye.
Oh, honourable members in favour, please say aye.
Aye.
Those against, please say no. Methinks the ayes have it.
Chamber now stands adjourned.
This chamber stands adjourned until Tuesday,
11th.
the 11th of February at 10 in the forenoon.
Yeah, for real. Actually, Dwight.